Thank you. Is this exciting or what? This is like having a family reunion. This is like a support group where conservatives can come together and we're all one happy family. And we got a sanity check. And what did you think about the president's speech this morning? Woo! Oh, thank you, Lord. After 8 years, finally we can breathe. But the work has just started. And as you can see from watching television, our work is not over. The work had just started. I am here today because I want to talk with you about immigration and refugee resettlement, because I thought this was a topic that is so important right now, watching what's happening around the country and especially watching what's happening in Europe. The immigration and refugee issue was one of the drivers in the last election. Americans are concerned, and rightfully so, watching what's happening in Europe with the refugee problem and what's coming to our country and what we are importing to our country, because of the ramification could be severe if we make the wrong decision. Europe right now is experiencing a mess beyond return, and this is why we need to take notice. As a legal immigrant to this great nation, I can speak with you about my own personal experience as an immigrant. I know something about the issue as a legal immigrant to our country. Very important. I can speak to you firsthand about how the process works and the difference between the immigrants and refugees that used to come to the country and what we are importing today. And for those of you who do not know my background, other than seeing me on Fox News talking about terrorism, I want to share with you where this passion comes from about this issue. You see, I was born and raised in Lebanon. My 9/11 happened to me in 1975 when radical Islamists blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble, wounded as they shouted, Allahu Akbar. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And later ended up living in a bomb shelter underground in an 8-by-10 room without electricity, without water, and very little food. And that's where I lived for 7 years of my life, from the age of 10 till the age of 17, robbed of my youth. I dressed in my burial clothes, my Sunday best, at the age of 13, waiting to be slaughtered. And by the age of 20, I had buried most of my friends who were killed by Islamic terrorism. This is why I am so passionate about this issue. My only window to the world was living in that bomb shelter through a television, a black and white television operated on a car battery. So my father can watch the news and see what's happening in the world around us. I was so determined to come to America because I would watch shows like Dallas and The Love Boat. I know a lot of you in the audience can relate. That was my only window to the world. And I thought, I have to learn English, because if I ever make it to America, because if I ever meet an American, I have to be able to speak with them in their language in order for me to make it to America. So I would watch Dallas and The Love Boat, and I would write subtitles on my arm. And because we barely had any water to drink, let alone shower, I built a huge vocabulary on my arm. That's how I learned English. Not in a school, watching Dallas and The Love Boat. That was my Rosetta Stone 30 years ago. I ended up moving to Israel and working as news anchor for World News, and that's how I ended up meeting my American-born husband, where we got married in Jerusalem and later came to the United States. I came to America by marriage, April 29, 1989. A day an immigrant who lives to make it to the promised land never forgets. April 29, 1989 is the day that I made it to America. America was a dream that became my address. Very few people can say that word. I had the luxury, when I started the process to become an American, of going and getting blood tests and blood work and medical bills that I had to pay for out of my own pocket, not the government. I had to pay for every blood test imaginable to be tested that I'm not bringing tuberculosis or leprosy or anything like that. And I hated needles, but I was willing to do it because I could not wait to be an American citizen. I had to pay for my lawyer out of my own pocket with a smile on my face to make sure my papers were done right. I had to study a 2-inch thick book written by the Daughters of the American Revolution about American history and American heritage, and had to take an exam, an oral exam and a written exam in English and pass in order for me to become an American. By the time, thank you. And I have been loving it since. I had been loving it since. And I did it because I loved being an American. I couldn't wait to be an American. By the time I graduated, passed my oral and written exam, I knew more about America's history than my own American-born husband did. Those are the type of immigrants you want, and that's the type of training every immigrant needs to go through. America has always opened its arms to refugees seeking freedom, coming from all over the world, refugees and immigrants. But today, people are coming here not for the freedom, but for the freebies paid for by you and me and our Treasury Department. I am going to discuss refugee resettlement right now and its impact on our society and culture, not from just a terrorism point of view, but from a cultural point of view. Here's how the process works, by the way. Many people do not realize that it is the United Nations who decides what refugees come to America, not America. The UN decides what refugees come here. They tell the State Department, they work with the State Department. The State Department works with 9 federal contractors to resettle the refugees in America. 6 out of the 9 are religious charities who are set up basically to help them bring the refugees. And these churches are not passing the bucket on Sunday morning to collect the $1 billion price tag to resettle the refugees. Oh no, they are collecting it from the Treasury Department, your pocket and my pocket. Here's the names of the 6 religious contractors out of the 9, and I'm just naming the religious ones. Church World Service, Episcopal Migration Ministries, Hebrew Migrant Society, Immigrant Aid Society, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and World Relief Corporation. They work with 350 subcontractors to resettle these refugees, and the subcontractors deposit them in 192 cities across America. The contractor gets $1,125 per refugee per head to spend in the first 30 days to basically buy them a coffee pot for their new home, lamps by the bedside, clocks, bed sheets, etc., dishes, knives, etc. By the time a refugee lands, he or she are only a taxi ride away from a warm meal in their own home. And then on top of that, the subcontractor gets to pocket $1,000 extra paid by you to spend it on themselves. So per refugee, these people are making $2,125, or per family, a little bit over $11,000. It is a cash cow, and everybody's jumping on the do-good wagon in order to make a ton of money because there are hundreds of millions of dollars to be made. And by the way, the subcontractors work with the refugee for 6 months, and after that, they start the whole process again with their extended family. This is the cash cow that it is. By the way, all these agencies working on bringing refugees are having a huge demonstration next week, Wednesday, in Washington, D.C., anti-Trump, no Muslim ban hashtag. And they are demonstrating because, they are such humanitarians. They want to bring all these refugees to the United States because they really care. It is not about the humanitarianism. It's about the hundreds of millions of dollars that's going to line their pockets. Here's an example of how much these religious charities are getting and what's going on, for example, behind the line. Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services is 95% funded by your tax dollars. We looked at their forms, 990 form, the IRS filings for 2015. Their total revenue for that year was $59,862,000 and some change. Total federal grants were $55,341,000 and some change. And they received from your money almost $2 million loan for a service fee. For more details, go to their federal grant, go to their usaspending.gov, enter Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, and see the number of the hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts they were able to collect in the last 8-9 years. Episcopal Migration Services is 99.5% funded by your tax dollars. So why should we be concerned about these refugees coming into the country and what they are bringing with them? Let's talk about what we are seeing in Europe with the cases of rape and sexual assault that's now happening in America. This is what's happening now in America. Cases of rape and sexual assault reported already in 6 states where refugees have been resettled: Massachusetts, Idaho, Virginia, Utah, California, North Dakota, and Minnesota. They have no respect for women, children, or our American values. Welcome to the new American citizens we are importing. They are bringing with them diseases that were once eradicated in the United States or under control. Cases of highly infectious bacterial diseases like tuberculosis, which is now mushrooming all over the United States. Colorado has 16 cases. Ohio, 11 cases. Vermont, 35 cases. Wisconsin, 117 cases. And by the way, these cases, a lot of them are active tuberculosis, and it's drug resistance, which means it costs us, the taxpayer, $185,000 per patient to be treated, and it takes them 6 to 8 months to be treated. Meanwhile, they're walking around infecting everybody else. Florida has 11 cases. Idaho, 7 cases, Indiana 4 cases, Kentucky 9 cases, and North Dakota 4 cases. Refugee resettlement is not about humanitarianism, but it's about supplying cheap labor. Industries looking to boost their bottom line that drive most refugee resettlement in the United States today. It is food processing, meat packing, manufacturing, and the hotel industry that have discovered that they can enjoy the cheap labor at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer and at the expense of cultural and societal upheaval that communities are experiencing today. Here's what I mean by that. Most refugees are on some type of welfare, and that makes anyone who employs them, any company that employs them, eligible for the federal work opportunity tax credit. An employer has a greater incentive to hire a refugee because the salary is subsidized by the government than hiring a good-hearted working American who is looking for a job. This is what's driving the refugee problem. A refugee's salary is subsidized by the U.S. taxpayer, while an average American job is not. It's not that Americans do not want to work, these cheap jobs. It's not that it's beneath them to work these jobs. It's because the companies are not giving them those jobs because they're giving them to cheap refugees, paid for by the same American who used to pay his taxes to the Treasury Department while he had a job. And now the regular Americans going to the back of the line, paying for the salaries of the refugees we are importing to this country, who hate America, do not share our values, and a lot of them actually are working against our own country. Here are some of the companies that are leading the charge in bringing refugees to the United States. Chobani Yogurt. How many of you know Chobani Yogurt or even use Chobani Yogurt? Chipotle, Starwood Hotel, Starbucks, just to name a few. These are the drivers of the refugee resettlement industry. They are contributing hundreds of thousands of dollars in their local communities to state elected officials, to city council on all levels, basically bribe money to keep them happy so they can approve bringing in refugees into their communities. They are doing this specifically where their facilities is being based and their operation is based. Chobani Yogurt has done this to perfection in Idaho. And now let's talk about terrorism threat coming from the refugee population. ISIS already came out and said that they have already embedded 4,000 ISIS operatives within the refugee population in order to come to the West and create terrorism attacks in the West. We just have to listen to our enemies. When you look at Europe and the terrorist attacks in Europe in the last 2 years, when you look at the terrorist attacks in Germany, Brussels, Belgium, France, Spain, and London, every single one of them was perpetrated by a refugee imported into Europe and paid for by the welcoming arms of unsuspecting, nice Europeans who wanted to provide them homes. The buck stops with the Republican Congress. Tell your representative in Washington, starting now, that you want them to support President Trump in protecting the country and reforming our refugee program, and start controlling the spending on admission program. Congress holds the purse strings. They are called your representative for a reason, because they work for you, not the other way around. You pay their salary. They are hired to represent you in Washington, D.C. by you. And if they are not representing you correctly, kick their behind out and replace them next election. Put them on the spot. Call them, show up to their town hall meetings, and ask them where they stand on the refugee issue and what they're doing about it and why they continue to fund it the way they are funding it. They cannot blame it on Obama anymore. They cannot blame it on the left. You don't worry about the left. You don't worry about the contractors. You don't worry about George Soros. The Republican Congress is what you need to go after and hold their feet to the fire to do the right thing by America. Republicans right now control the committees that make the decision, the appropriations committees, which make the decision about how many refugees that will come to your towns and how much money will be allocated by the federal agencies to spend on the State Department and the Health and Human Services in order to be deposited in your communities. And do not forget Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, and Mitch McConnell, the majority leader in the Senate. The buck stops with them. And this is why we in this country, the grassroots, needs to develop the backbone, stand up and fight for our country. And I stand up and fight. And I love what Steve Bannon said. Don't think they're going to give you your country without a fight. You've got to fight for it. We have a lot of elected officials who are sitting comfortable in Washington, D.C., counting on our vote time after time after time. Well, that is about to change. The time to play nicey-nicey with those who represent us because we are intimidated by them or embarrassed to put them on the line is over. Nicey-nicey time is over. Our country is at a crossroad, and we need everybody engaged, and we need everybody involved. Start making these calls. Start showing up to the town hall meetings. Make the time to do it. It's all about the grassroots. And I encourage you to join us. Act for America. My organization is actforamerica.org. We named the organization Act for America. Not think about America, not wish for America, not hope for America, not pray for America. We named it what? Act for America, because without action, nothing happens. Go and sign up to join us. We have refugee resettlement working groups all over the country. We have chapters all over the country. Sign up and join a group in your community. If there is no group in your community, sign up and become an activist on our website. We make it very easy for you. Act for America has passed almost 100 bills on the federal and state level to secure the country in different states. We need you engaged. We need you involved. Go to actforamerica.org and join us. And I cannot end my presentation without honoring our veterans and our military personnel in this room. Please stand up and be recognized. I have a message for you. All our military personnel and our veterans. God bless. bless you. They're so humble. They sit down so fast. Okay, now I'm going to ask you, all our veterans and military personnel, to please stand up. I have a message for you, and wait, please hold your applause till the end. All our veterans and military personnel, please stand up. Wow. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, as an immigrant to this nation, for building a nation for me where I can come and be all I can be as an American. I want to thank you for my freedoms, every freedom I have, my freedom of speech, my freedom of religion, my freedom of expression, and every other freedom I have. I know that my freedom is built upon your shoulders and your sacrifice. I want to thank you for every night you slept away from home. I want to thank you for every meal you missed. I want to thank you for every family occasion you missed. I want to thank you for spending sleepless nights defending and keeping a watchful eye over America so we can sleep on our homes. You are not only my heroes, you are the heroes of millions of Americans who are unable to stand before you here today, and thank you. On their behalf, I thank you. I thank you on behalf of millions of people across the world who are still living under tyranny, who will never make it to America to thank you. On their behalf, I thank you for spreading justice and freedom around the world. And I vow to you that I am building an organization with Act for America that will always praise you, that will always lift you up in prayers, that will always sing of your sacrifice, that will see to it that we teach our young, new brats where their freedom comes from, so they will never take it for granted. May God bless you one and all, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you all for having me here with you. Thank you so much. I love you.